9 zones cleared roughly 4 times, including the frickin' moon at this point. 4 characters mastered, and it wouldn't be a Sonic game if there weren't 7 Chaos Emeralds to collect. Hey everyone, I'm Gerard the Completionist. Welcome to The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. I am currently completing Tears of the Kingdom, like the whole world is currently playing, but for this week, I completed Sonic Advance for the Gameboy Advance. And in true Sonic fashion, I did it very quickly, in just about 5 hours or less. Sonic games are some of my favorite experiences, so it should come to no surprise here that I give this game my completionist rating of finish it. Let's spin dash right on in.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner! Game over! Wake up! Last one standing wins!
Sonic the Hedgehog is the avatar of controlled chaos. He moves fast, he breaks things, and I've always loved this little speedster since the first time I picked up a Sega Genesis controller. And that love has only grown as time has gone on. So it's a bit of a blind spot for me to realize that I've missed out on the entire Sonic Advance series, let alone almost all Sonic portable titles. This feels like having a little TV show that you love or a band that you listen to religiously and finding out there was an entire season or album that you just straight out missed. I'm delighted. Having completed practically every mainline Sonic title, sorry Shadow, your day will come, it's a pleasure to finally make it to the handheld side of things. Completing it feels a little like playing Sonic again for the very first time, as this game is full of mechanics from and references to the past as it tries to chart out the future. Now, when I was younger, I didn't have access to every console like I do now. I never had a Game Boy Advance growing up, so it makes logical sense that I did not play the Sonic Advance games. But I can still retroactively kick myself for missing out. Since I am coming to this game 22 years later, I definitely have noticed some design decisions that haven't aged super gracefully. If you're unfamiliar with Sonic, somehow, this entire character and franchise was dreamed up by creator Yuji Naka as Sega's answer to Super Mario Bros. Back in the ancient days of 1991. The series started out as a 2D platformer, but with an emphasis on speed and momentum, as opposed to Mario's more careful and deliberate platforming. Sonic rips through stages, whirls through loop-de-loops, and deals with enemies either by bopping on them on the head, using a special spin dash, or avoiding them entirely. Sonic Advance follows in the footsteps of the original 2D series with a few new twists. The plot is very bare bones. In a short opening cutscene, we see Dr. Eggman is at it again, trying to collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds to gain ultimate power. Players must race through all the various zones, defeating Eggman's powerful robots and completing 7 special stages to find the emeralds. But the big thing here is that there are 4 playable characters to choose from this time around. Sonic is here obviously, so is Tails and Knuckles, but for the first time ever in a 2D game, you can play as Amy Rose. Now yes, Sonic has come a long way from his 2D roots. As the years rolled by, Sonic and his friends and foes did all the things you might expect of video game characters nowadays. They've raced, they've mean-beamed, and they eventually transitioned into 3D gameplay. But Sonic Advance doubles down on the speed-obsessed gameplay of his origins. In a 2004 IGN interview, Yuji Naka himself said, "In order to really enjoy Sonic, 2D is truly the way to do it. As much as I love 2022 Sonic Frontiers, I gotta say, it does feel refreshing to play a new to me 2D Sonic game. I have a deep abiding love for Sonic and all of his pals. That said, I went into Sonic Advance with a good sense of excitement. There's a lot to enjoy here. Everything I love about Sonic is present in some form. But even if this game feels familiar to longtime fans, Sonic Advance is a game of firsts. It might seem unremarkable now, but this was actually the first original Sonic game released on a Nintendo console. For many Nintendo fans, Sonic exposure occurred with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube, an expanded version of the Dreamcast game. But Sonic Advance was built from the ground up to be on a Nintendo platform. Sonic Advance also features connectivity with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Sonic Adventure DX via the GBA GameCube link cable. This is a real significance to Sonic crossing over to Nintendo. For years, the two developers have been spurring each other on creatively. Yeah, console war, blah, blah, blah. But Nintendo and Sega have always seemed more like friendly rivals to me more than anything else. Even though they fought for a long time, let's be honest. Sega and Sonic team really wanted this game to shine and put a lot of effort into making it feel distinct. There's a great joint interview from December 2001 between Shigeru Miyamoto and Yuji Naka. Miyamoto says, "After we made Mario, a lot of games came out with characters imitating that jump action platforming system. Of all of these, I think Sonic had a certain uniqueness." Miyamoto acknowledges that even though a lot of games tried to crib Mario's style, Sonic the Hedgehog stood out. And even in the crowded launch year of the GBA, Sonic Advance makes its mark. Miyamoto goes on to say of the first Sonic game, "I can tell it was made by people who understand what the joy of games is all about. Sonic Advance feels joyful. You can tell that Sega truly wanted to put their best efforts into the first Sonic title on a Nintendo platform. This game marked the 10-year anniversary of the character, and this release felt appropriately momentous for the time. Sonic Advance showcases everything great about Sonic games. It feels fast, surprisingly dense gameplay-wise. This is not the first handheld Sonic game, shoutouts to all the Game Gear games out there, but it is the first one to incorporate several mechanics from the adventure games into 2D, like rail grinding. In another first, this game puts artistic design of modern Sonic into a 2D game. You might notice that the Sonic sprite is a little less round than Sonic from 1, 2, or 3. The way he's been translated into this game looks awesome. I think the sprite work, animation, and general art direction of Sonic Advance is top notch. Okay, so completing Sonic Advance is a fairly simple prospect. Beat every zone with all 4 characters and collect all the Chaos Emeralds by hitting those special stages. In this game, Chaos Emeralds are shared amongst all 4 characters, so you don't need to collect all 7 of them in each playthrough. Once you've beaten the game with everyone and found all the emeralds, you'll have access to the final secret level. Okay, let's be real here. I'm not counting versus mode as any type of completion requirement or to-do list, because like hell am I digging out 4 GBAs and 4 link cables to try and make all this work. There is a time attack feature, but there are no developer times to beat or anything to accomplish. The only other thing to worry about is the Tiny Chow Garden, a miniature version of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle's most weirdly addictive feature. The Tiny Chow Garden is meant to just be a relaxing place to raise one single chow. You can then transfer that data to your GameCube if you so desire, but again, I'm not considering raising a perfect chow to be a completion criteria for this game. At this point in my career, I've raised plenty of perfect chow, and since the Tiny Chow Garden is really meant to transfer to and from the Sonic Adventure franchise, I'm not planning on engaging with it much here, but that's essentially it. Yet just because Sonic Advance is a straightforward, compact completion package does not mean the game is not satisfying. This is truly an authentic Sonic experience. It both aims to satiate nostalgia and at the same time define Sonic for a new generation. But I do think that Sonic Advance suffers from a bit of an identity crisis. After completing it, I think this game doesn't entirely know what it wants it to be of itself. During the completion process of this game, I found myself drawn to its similarities and differences to classic Sonic titles. If you were a Nintendo kid mostly and this was your first true Sonic game, you probably won't even notice the differences. But I kind of consider myself a Sonic expert, right? And like a great painting that is hung slightly crooked, it's just a few degrees short of perfection. This game makes a strong first impression. It looks gorgeous. Sonic Team made a beautiful looking game where the pixels are practically popping off the screen. The opening animation looks great. I love the character select screen. If you've played any Sonic game since Sonic 2, you're used to having more than one player character, and to me, this is Sonic Advance's greatest strength. All 4 characters look and play totally different, giving this admittedly short game a very long tail. So let's start with Sonic. This version of Sonic blends mechanics from all across the series. He can spin dash, do a weird cartwheel handstand roll thing, grind on rails, and as you might expect, surprise, surprise, can run very quickly. But in my eyes, Sonic doesn't quite control as tightly as you might expect from a more modern side. It truly does feel like classic Sonic, for whatever that means to you. There's a certain amount of accuracy that I feel is lacking here. If I sound like I'm hedging a little bit, bit here. Oh, I made a hedgehog pun and didn't even intend to. Yay me. If I sound like I'm hedging here, it's because the solid controls run into inconsistent level design, but I'll circle back to that soon. Next up, we've got Tails, the homie who flies. Now, Tails looks great in this game. He looks just as cute and wholesome as ever. He can do that signature helicopter spin, allowing him to reach heights far beyond his allies. He also has a spin dash, and speed is on his side. In water levels, his swimming is very useful. And come on, look at how cute these animations are. Knuckles also allows you to think vertically. You can climb certain walls, making some platforming absolutely trivial. The glide returns, allowing Knuckles to destroy enemies by gliding into them at the right angle. I'd almost consider Knuckles to be easy mode, as his movement abilities give the players the option to fly, climb, and destroy enemies with ease. Amy Rose is the most divergent out of the 4 playable characters. Rather than jumping through enemies with a spin dash, Amy smashes robots with her classic Pico Pico hammer. The hammer also gives her a high jump, which lets her skip entire areas with a well-timed smash. She definitely feels slower than the other characters, but she makes up for it with her smashing. And she can also grind too. I guess rail grinding is the hedgehog only trait here. I appreciate the wide diversity of gameplay options. Playing the game through 4 times, I really got a sense of each character's strengths. It feels awesome to go through a stage as Tails, and then to go back through it again as Amy. You immediately will notice a huge difference. All that said, there are some design choices that hindered my enjoyment. The first 3 Sonic games were great examples of designers learning how to improve their craft. Each game builds upon the previous one, fixing small mistakes and smoothing out design flaws. Sonic Advance, to some degree, feels like it brings back mistakes that Sonic Team has already learned how to fix. The close-up perspective makes perfect sense for a handheld console, but I have found myself boosting into spikes and getting squished more often than I would have liked to have. I'm eager to see if and how Sonic Advance 2 and 3 adjusts to this, if at all. It seemed to me that if the camera were, I don't know, let's say like 10% pulled back, you could predict stage hazards so much better. This would serve the game better in terms of finding the special stages. Playing the game with no research, I had a tough time finding the special stages themselves, even though I knew they existed somewhere. Going back to the camera, I think the close-up camera is meant to encourage you to slow down and explore more, which is a great idea in theory. The Sonic Adventure influence is real here, but this slower-paced exploration aspect feels at odds to me with how fast this game wants you to go and feel. Finding and completing special stages feels like its own separate game. Every zone in Sonic Advance is surprisingly complex, especially Casino Paradise Zone, and it is weirdly hard to find where the springs are for the special stages. I'm pretty sure you can reach any special stage with any character if you are dedicated enough. Was certainly able to do so with Sonic. It felt to me like some special stages were meant to be reached by specific characters via their unique abilities. Special stages transports your player character to a bonus level where you must collect a certain amount of rings to earn a Chaos Emerald. They serve to mix up the gameplay and provide a new challenge. But once again, I couldn't help but draw upon my experience having completed every other classic Sonic plus Sonic Mania. Special stages in these older games feel like accomplishments in and of themselves, with rewards attached. I've got a few complaints mixed with compliments about how Sonic Advance handles them. The special stages do look incredible. I have to give it up for that. You're basically put into a tube or chute on a flying snowboard to race forward, along with the Z-axis to fly through rings and other collectibles. Pixel art is real cool, and the snowboard is always hype. I love how it looks like you're falling through a different dimension, but there's a lack of polish in the actual controls that feels kind of janky. This feels like an intentional decision, but I'm not sure if it was the right play here. I understand that because they're special stages with alternative control schemes, they should feel difficult, but I did find myself occasionally frustrated with these stages. You kind of have to be pixel perfect in some areas to get all the rings you need, and that can be a problem. Not to mention the fact that you can only attempt a special stage once per life. I found myself having to reset entire runs due to slight mistakes. Even though they're pretty damn hard, the special stages are a pretty good example of how this game is full of innovation, and I appreciate it on that level. But I am a total sucker for the Sonic nostalgia that is baked into this game. The music is low-key great. It services the game super well and makes amazing use of the Gameboy Advance soundscape. Usually tracks between acts 1 and 2 of a given zone in classic games are very similar, if not the exact same, but in Sonic Advance, they are different parts altogether in each act. I feel like the music, sound effects, and levels are there to honor Sonic's past. Hearing the Invincibility song is an instant throwback to me. I loved seeing different takes on my favorite stages as well, as Sonic Advance essentially takes stuff that fans have seen before and reconfigures it in a fun and fresh new way for a portable device. Another way this game leverages a love of Sonic's past is in the final fight against Eggman in this space stage here. It's a 3-phase battle, and each phase is a throwback to a different Sonic game. We've got the classic Green Hill Zone boss fight, Emerald Hill Zone boss fight from Sonic 2, and then what feels like different forms from Sonic 1, 2, and 3 for the final phase. I loved seeing these bosses again, but I was also struck by the notion that this game's difficulty is almost entirely depending on which character you play as. Eggman doesn't use unique tactics against each character or anything, so some boss battles will feel really easy and others will be much harder. There are some design elements here that I think would have been useful. The UI experience is a little bit undercooked here, and the pause menu is just a pause menu. There is no way to back out to the main menu without resetting the entire game because it's a Game Boy. So you must beat the game essentially in one sitting per character. The game does remember when you've collected Chaos Emeralds though, no matter which character you play as. Though again, I did find this kind of hard to track. There's nothing on the menus that say, hey, you have all the Chaos Emeralds. I think that Sonic Advance pays great respect to the Sonic franchise. Sonic Team's first original effort on a Nintendo console is a strong one. It occasionally feels like its focus is split between trying to recreate a classic Sonic experience and giving diehard fans something new. If I had played this game before Sonic Mania or before I just revisited the most recent Sonic Origins collection, I think perhaps I'd be a little kinder towards it. As it stands, I can appreciate it for what it is. So Sonic the Hedgehog games have always been hit or miss regarding completion. In 2D Sonic, I've always felt like the rewards were easy to earn and generally worth it. 3D Sonic games tend to be more of a mixed bag in terms of completion bonuses. Sonic Advance doesn't really offer much for the dedicated completionist, but it's a compact enough experience that you can't really be mad at in the end. There are only 2 real completion bonuses in my mind. The first is my absolute favorite thing about Sonic games, the ability to play as Super Sonic. Once you've beaten every level with all 4 characters and found all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you have to beat the final zone again with Sonic. From there, after you defeat Dr. Eggman, you'll go to the freaking moon. The moon zone is essentially a Super Sonic boss gauntlet. This is my favorite kind of completion bonus. You know, the one when you turn into a golden god and fly around. I never get tired of Super Sonic. Even after completing so many different Sonic games in all kinds of different dimensions, there's just something special about stepping into the might and power of Super Sonic, where you just know the music will be incredible. And there's the added bonus of earning a different ending cinematic. I will add though, I don't think Super Sonic feels as rewarding in Sonic Advance as that bonus has in other Sonic titles. It is a disappointment that Super Sonic is limited to just one area. And yeah, I'll say it, the music is fine. I'm not expecting it to be as epic as something from Super Sonic and Sonic Frontiers, though battling against the final Eggman mecha is pretty sweet. There's no way in hell this would ever be canonical, but part of me wishes that there was some kind of opportunity for Super Tails, Super Knuckles, or even Super Amy if they wanted to push the 4 playable characters idea to its logical conclusion. There's already a sound test in the menu, but beating the game does add a few more tracks to the sound test, which I guess technically is the second completion bonus. It ain't much, but it is something. There's also a fun cheat code you can input to let Tails follow you around, which is another throwback to Sonic 2. This isn't really a completion bonus, just a fun thing I wanted to call out because, well, I love Tails, and having him run around with you on screen simply feels right to me at this point. I don't expect a massive completion bonus when a game is this short. All told, the entire experience of completing Sonic Advance took about 5 to 6 hours. Each zone can be completed in a matter of minutes once you know where the special stages and the regular exits are. So even spending extra time exploring didn't add much to my overall playtime. Again, it's a game designed to be replayed multiple times, and it always feels rewarding to try and beat your high score or blaze through a stage without losing any rings. If you're the kind of player who loves to set challenges for themselves, this is a great game to experiment with.
Sonic Advance is a great game. I wish it had a little more to offer in terms of length, but I can't really hold that against the experience. In terms of its development goals, I'd call Sonic Advance a huge success. It introduces the whole cast of lovable characters to a whole generation of portable gamers, and provides enough variety for longtime fans to feel like they're getting something new and fresh. I loved playing it, and to be clear, if I had a Game Boy Advance with the game on launch day, I would have lost my mind. But a few design stumbles here and there hold Sonic Advance back a fair amount. and why I give this game my completionist rating of finish it. Knowing that there are a few sequels ahead, I can't wait to see how Sonic Team improved on the foundation they laid here. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go ahead and play more Tears of the Kingdom, and if you like this video, go ahead and check out more of my content, whether it's Sonic or my video on Breath of the Wild, to get you ready for our big video on that game when it's ready. I'm Dr the Completionist. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.